You know how sometimes you look at an ancient text and it feels like you're trying to crack a code? Like it's a dense puzzle just waiting to be solved? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're diving into the world of the Talmudic sages to solve a mystery that, believe it or not, starts with a single drop of blood and ends up revealing a huge universal principle of law.
So let me ask you something. What if a single drop of blood could completely invalidate an entire sacred ceremony? I mean, think about that. An elaborate ritual, absolutely central to a community's sense of atonement, could just, poof, go up in smoke. All because of one tiny mistake. The stakes are just incredibly high, and that's the world we're stepping into right now.
All right, so here's the scene. A priest is in the middle of a ritual, and some of the sacrificial blood splatters onto his robes. Now you or I might just think, oh, gotta get that out in the wash. But for the sages, no way. That little stain isn't just a stain, it's a clue. It's the first thread they're gonna pull in this massive legal investigation.
Okay, so let's get into it. The case of the bloodstain. This is really where our detective story kicks off. Because the sages, they don't just see a laundry problem, right? They see a legal puzzle. And to solve it, they zoom in on just a few words with, like, the intensity of a forensic team.
So the big question is, does the garment need to be laundered? I mean, ritually laundered. And it turns out the answer depends completely on where that blood came from and what its purpose was. This one seemingly simple question sparks this huge debate between two major sages, Ravina and Ralph Tachlifa.
Okay, so the whole argument boils down to this one little phrase, from the corner. What does that even mean? Rav Talifa, he thinks it could mean any blood that was meant for the altar's corner, blood that was fit for the job. But Ravina, he comes in with this much sharper take. He says, no. It has to mean blood that has literally already been put on the corner and then splattered off. And you might be thinking, who cares? But believe me, this tiny distinction, it's everything.
And this is where Ravina lays down his trump card. His logic is just brilliant. He basically says, look, why would the law state the obvious? The law is efficient. It doesn't waste words. So if the text is going out of its way to tell us something, it must be teaching us something new, something we wouldn't have assumed. His conclusion is that only blood that has already finished its job on the altar is exempt from laundering. It's a subtle point for sure, but man, it completely changes the game.
So solving that first puzzle about the garment just blows the doors open to a much bigger one. The sages start thinking, wait a minute, if the law is this efficient here, maybe that's a rule we can use everywhere. And so their investigation takes a turn. They shift their focus from the priest's robe to this really weird, kind of redundant-sounding verse in the book of Leviticus.
Okay, check this out. The verse says, and he shall do with the bull as he did with the bull for a sin offering. So it's talking about two different offerings. And for the second one, it basically says, hey, just do the same thing you did for the first one. Simple enough. Except, here's the kicker. The Torah has already told us step by step what to do with that second bull. It's like giving someone directions and then adding, oh, and by the way, just follow the directions.
So why in the world would the Torah say the same thing twice? This is the turning point. This isn't just some sloppy editing. For the sages, this is like a giant flashing neon sign. They're thinking the most concise legal text in the world would never repeat itself by accident. This has to be on purpose. It's a signal, an emphasis on something incredibly important. And that's when they realize they haven't just found a clue. They've stumbled onto a master key.
And boom, this is the breakthrough. That extra phrase, the one that seemed so redundant, it wasn't a mistake at all. It was the Torah's way of screaming, hey, pay attention. This part is so important, we're literally saying it twice for emphasis. And with that clue, the sages uncover this core concept that really governs the entire ritual system. You could call it the point of no return.
The word they use for it is indispensable, an action that is so critical that if you miss it, the whole thing is void. That repetition in the verse isn't just for flair, it's a legal marker. It's flagging certain steps as absolutely essential. A priest could do 99% of the ceremony perfectly, but if he misses just one of these indispensable actions, it's all for nothing. The entire atonement fails.
So what are we talking about here? What are these make-or-break actions? Well, the sages figure out that they're the most central, most sacred blood applications. We're talking about the 7 sprinklings of blood on the curtain and the 4 placements of blood on the inner altar. These are the big ones. Miss a single one, and the whole thing is a wash.
Okay, so now they have this master key, this powerful new principle. And what do you do when you have a new tool? You test it out, right? That's exactly what the sages do. They take this idea of indispensability and start applying it to other laws to see if it holds up, to see if it can create a really consistent system. And it works. That one verse becomes this amazing analytical tool. They basically use its logic to sort all the other offerings into two neat piles. Those that have to follow this super strict rule, and those that don't.
And their logic is so clean, so elegant. They just ask, okay, which other offerings are basically the same type of thing as the bull from our verse? Well, the goats brought for idol worship, that's a perfect match. That offering is for a known, specific sin. So boom, it's included. It has indispensable parts. But then you look at the goats for festivals. Those are for more general, maybe even unknown sins. The purpose is different, so they're excluded. It's just a beautiful piece of logical system building.
But they don't just stop there. The sages, being who they are, push it one level deeper. They add this final layer of clarity. They realize they can use this same logic not just to sort different offerings, but to sort the different actions within a single offering itself. They notice another clue in the text. There are these phrases that seem to say atonement is achieved even if some of the smaller steps get missed. And this lets them create two tiers of action. You've got Tier 1, the absolutely indispensable stuff like the blood placements we talked about, and then you have Tier 2, actions that are still important for sure, but not deal breakers. Things like placing hands on the animal or pouring out the rest of the blood.
And here's the ultimate logic, the beautiful rule that ties this whole thing together. To figure out if an action is indispensable in this case, the sages ask a simple question. Is it indispensable in every other case where it shows up? This demand for universal consistency, that's the bedrock of their entire legal architecture. It's just so elegant.
So just take a step back and think about the journey we just went on. It all started with a simple, almost trivial problem, right? A bloodstain on a robe. But by relentlessly, stubbornly following the logic, by refusing to believe the text would ever waste a word, the sages uncovered this incredibly profound, organizing principle. They brought clarity to a whole system of law. It's truly a masterful piece of thinking.
And, this whole ancient process leaves us with a really modern question. We all live in a world full of gray areas, right? We're constantly navigating complex systems at work, in our families, in society, and it can be so hard to tell what's critical and what's just noise. So I guess the question for us is, what's the value in our own lives of doing what they did, of really drilling down past all the distractions to figure out what is truly, fundamentally indispensable?